Excited to have you guys here, gals here, and the opportunity that we're going to have this morning and through the rest of this conference to hear some great information, and hopefully not just information that fills our head with knowledge, but instead spurs us on to accomplish things in our community, to begin to defend marriage in ways that I think will matter for the future generations. My name is Sean Sells. Myself, Jonathan Lang, and Tim Moyer put together this group, Wyoming Pastors Network, and are excited to be here today. And I'm going to introduce our speaker this morning. His name is Dr. Ryan Anderson. Some of you may have already heard of him if you pay much attention to some of the political shows on TV. But Dr. Anderson is the William E. Simons Senior Research Fellow in American Principles and Public Policy at the Heritage Foundation, founder and editor of Public Discourse, the online journal of the Witherspoon Institute of Princeton, New Jersey, the author of the just-released book, Truth Overruled, The Future of Marriage and Religious Freedom, co-author with Princeton's Robert P. George and Sharif Gerges of the book, What is Marriage? Man and Woman in Defense. Justice Samuel Alito cited this book twice in his dissenting opinion of the Federal Defense of Marriage Act case in 2013. Justice Clarence Thomas cited Anderson's research in his dissenting opinion in the Supreme Court case as well. And so with that, I'll just go ahead and introduce to you Ryan Anderson, and let you take it from here.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for having me. Let me see if I can get this to stay in place. Maybe not. We'll try it again. It must be causing you problems. Maybe when we're doing the lapel mic.
Let's take the lapel down. Sean, here.
All right. Well, it seems. Does this work? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just barely. Just barely. Is this working okay, or should we do a lapel mic? Looks like a lapel mic's coming, so we'll just wait for a minute. Okay, so how about now? A little bit better? Hear me?
There we go.
Okay, so we're good to go. All right, let me put this in. So last night I was at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. Is that where it is? Yeah. And so I'm going to spend 3 sessions with you guys today. This first session is largely going to be what I said last night to the students there. This is it was a mixed audience. There were some conservative Christian students there. There were also some liberal secularist students. The majority of the campus is liberal secularist, but it was a Catholic group who had sponsored me. But what I did was I told them from the very beginning that I wasn't speaking from the perspective of theology or revelation, biblical understanding of marriage. I was just coming at this from the perspective of philosophy and social science and constitutional law and public policy. That I'm not a theologian, I'm not trained as a pastor or a biblical scholar, so I'm not going to be doing like a biblical exegesis of what marriage is or a sound theology of marriage. I'm trained as a political philosopher. My PhD is in political philosophy. And so I wanted to come at it from the perspective of public reason, from an understanding of human nature and natural law, to think through what the truth about marriage is at a natural level, because then I believe that grace builds on nature, grace perfects nature, and so we'll then see a supernatural understanding of marriage simply will build on that natural foundation of marriage. And what I've experienced in the past 10 or 15 years in the American debate over same-sex marriage was that it was consistently framed as bigoted, homophobic, backwards, superstitious, Christians imposing their morality on other people, versus the enlightened forces of reason and civility on the other side. And so they always wanted to frame it as if, well, that's just the Bible, that's just what your church says, but all of the good arguments and reason say the opposite. And what I think that one of the strengths of the pro-life movement was that they showed there's no tension between faith and reason. One of the successes of the pro-life movement in the United States was that it showed that faith and reason go together and they come to the same conclusion. The best of theology and the best of philosophy, the best of science, embryology, ultrasound imaging, the best of science and the best of revelation all point to the same conclusions. The same thing is true about marriage. We just haven't been as equipped to make that argument in the public square. And I think one of the reasons that we had this challenge was because this didn't just start 10 years ago with the same-sex marriage debate. This starts about 50 years ago. And I think many Christians were late to engage on this issue. They made their peace a little bit too much with the sexual revolution. So where I actually want to start for this morning session is in thinking through the Moynihan report. If you're familiar with Daniel Patrick Moynihan, he was infamous for writing a report when he was Secretary of Health and Human Services about the state of the black family. And so it's 50 years ago that Moynihan says births to single mothers in the general population are in the single digits, but within the African American community, they're beginning to approach 25%. And he writes his report and he says, this is going to be traumatic for those children and for those mothers, for those families, for those communities. This is not going to be good. Moynihan is then criticized for being a racist. The response to his report is Moynihan's blaming the victim, Moynihan's blaming African Americans. Moynihan is a liberal professor of sociology at Harvard University. He was the Democrat liberal senator from the state of New York. He was not a racist. He wrote his report precisely because he cared about black people, and he thought that the breakdown of the family would actually be one of the causes in the rise of poverty and the lack of social mobility that we've now seen for the past 50 years with the African American community. He was one of the first to point out something's going on within family structure. Here's what we now know today, that it's not unique to the black family. That what was first happening there has happened to all families over the past 50 years. So today, births to single mothers in the general population are 40%. Remember, at Moynihan's time, it was single digits for the general population. Today, it's 40%. In the Hispanic community, it's 50%, and in the African American community, it's over 70%. These children have done nothing wrong. Frequently, these women are the heroes of the story because they're the only ones that actually take responsibility and do right by their kids. But something has gone wrong in our culture that we now have 40% of all American children born to single mothers. And then the outcomes for those children and those mothers and those communities, when the boyfriend or the husband or the father fails to man up, are quite drastic and severe. So the first thing to say is that gays and lesbians aren't to blame for this. Okay? The spike in non-marital childbearing rates isn't the fault of same-sex marriage or gay and lesbian advocacy. The fault here is heterosexuals who bought into a liberal ideology about human sexuality, of the family, and of marriage. The problem here is that heterosexuals 50 years ago bought into a lie about their own sexuality and about the nature of marriage and the purposes of marriage and what marriage requires. And it's what came out of the sexual revolution. It's what came out of the 60s. So the slogan, marriage should last as long as the love lasts, wasn't something that gays and lesbians invented. It's something that straight people invented 50 years ago. The idea that love makes a family, that consenting adults should do whatever consenting adults want to do. These are things that many heterosexuals first started propagating, and now many believe, and many live out. Even inside of the church, many live out those sorts of dogmatic statements. And so what you've seen in the past 50 years is that after the sexual revolution, we see the rise of the hookup culture. We see the increase in the rates of non-marital childbearing. We see the normalization of cohabitation. And we see the more than doubling of the rates of divorce, and we see the introduction of no-fault divorce laws. All of those changes in the culture and in the law are things that straight people did. And it's that logical progression that then set us up for Anthony Kennedy and the 4 liberal Supreme Court justices to redefine the very nature of marriage. The cultural redefinition of marriage sets the stage for the legal redefinition of marriage. It's only after heterosexuals say monogamy and exclusivity and permanency don't matter that Anthony Kennedy can say, oh, and sexual complementarity doesn't matter either. So I just think it's important to understand kind of, it would have been inconceivable 50 years ago for the Supreme Court to say male-female sexual complementarity doesn't matter in marriage. What sets the stage for that is 50 years of our communities failing to live out the truth about marriage. And partly it's because they fail to understand the truth about marriage. Ideas shape behaviors. And so what I want to do this morning is first, in this session, just go through a philosophy of marriage. How to understand what marriage is, not from a revealed perspective, but from a reasoned perspective. And we know that God can communicate to us both through divine revelation, but also through the natural law, the law that's written on the heart. We know that both the book of nature and the book of Revelation are all revealing God's truths. And so this morning I want to think about that. The first session of the afternoon, I'm then going to turn to the religious liberty questions. And I'll talk a little bit about the Little Sisters of the Poor. And just last week, the Supreme Court announced they're going to be reviewing that case. And just in general, what's going on with religious liberty, and in particular, religious liberty in the aftermath of the Obergefell decision. And the last session today is going to be, well, what can we do? Concretely, what can you do as a network of pastors and concerned citizens? What can the church do more broadly? What sort of legislative options? What should be passed? What should be defeated? What are good public policies to see promoted? And what are bad public policies that need to be prevented from becoming law? So that's kind of the trajectory. So let me start by saying, I imagine everyone in this auditorium tonight, or this morning, I forget where I am and what time of day it is, this morning in Wyoming, is in favor of marriage equality. We all want the law to treat all marriages equally. What we disagree about is what sort of a relationship is a marriage. So as Sean mentioned, that first book that I co-authored with a classmate of mine from Princeton and with a professor of ours there was titled, What is Marriage? Because that's the question that's really been driving these debates, and the question that liberals refuse to answer. They would say, oh, I'm in favor of marriage equality. I'm against discrimination. I'm in favor of justice. Love equals love. And we're like, okay, great, I'm in favor of all those things too. Tell me, what's a marriage? Because only if we know what type of consenting adult relationship is a marital relationship, can we then know whether the law and the government is respecting marriage equality or violating marriage equality. Because even those in favor of redefining marriage to include same-sex couples stop at a certain point, right? They draw certain lines. They only extend marriage equality to couples. Why? On what basis are they drawing that line? If we want the law in the state of Wyoming to draw the right lines, we have to know what the nature of the marital relationship is. For public policy to be based on principle, it needs to reflect the truth. This is the connection between truth and goodness, between truth and an authentic understanding of freedom, a liberty, not license. So you need to understand what the truth about marriage is to know if your state is defining it correctly and therefore respecting equality and justice and freedom. Or is it imposing a false understanding of marriage? Now, when we were doing research for that book, we went through all the leading activists and thinkers on the left to see what is their understanding of what the nature of marriage is. And what we saw was that they thought marriage was about an intense emotional union. That what makes marriage different than other sorts of relationships is the intensity of the bond between the romantically involved adults, or the priority that the union had in the lives of those adults. It's what a philosopher at Wayne State University said marriage was about, quote, your number one person. So this understanding of marriage just sees marriage as a difference of degree from other relationships rather than difference in kind. So this understanding of marriage has what other relationships has, but it has more of it, or it has it to a greater degree, or it has it in a more important way. We think this just hits the nature of marriage wrong. That marriage isn't a difference in degree from friendships and business relationships. Marriage is different in kind from those relationships. And it's different in kind because the marital union is founded on a different sort of commitment, serving different sorts of goals, and requires different sort of things of spouses. But before I explain that, let me say a few more words about why this consenting adult romance and caregiving understanding of marriage simply fails the philosophy of marriage. If this is what marriage is, why would marriage need to be a permanent relationship? You know, an intense emotional bond, well, emotions come and they go. Love waxes and wanes. Your romance, you can fall in love, you can fall out of love. What would it be about marriage just as such that would necessitate that it be a permanent relationship? Likewise, why would marriage be an exclusive relationship? Some people say that their romantic bond with their partner is actually enhanced if they're free to seek sexual fulfillment with other people. So the romantic caregiving relationship that they have with their spouse will actually be facilitated if someone else can help fulfill their sexual needs. On this theory of marriage, why would that be unacceptable? And then lastly, why would marriage be a monogamous union? If marriage is simply about an intense emotional bond, consenting adult romance and caregiving, why can only two people enter into such a marriage? And then lastly, why is government in the marriage business at all? If marriage is simply about the love lives of consenting adults, why do we have the state in our bedrooms? It seems like you wouldn't be able to explain the universal historical reality of government being in the marriage business if it's just about consenting adult love. So what we argue is that this is simply a bad philosophy of marriage. But there's nothing distinctively homosexual about this philosophy of marriage. Many heterosexuals operate according to this vision of marriage. It's the vision of marriage that informs their own lives. It's how they're raising their children to think about marriage. That it's simply about their love lives, their romantic lives, their caregiving. And that's why we see public opinion shifting, because it's not just about the gay marriage part, it's about the marriage part. So what's a better alternative? This is where we borrowed a lesson from Aristotle. So what I want to do now is just go through what marriage is, why marriage matters, and then I'm going to close with 4 consequences of redefining marriage. And so for this first section, the what is marriage concept, we looked at Aristotle, an ancient Greek philosopher. He lived 2,500 years ago, pagan, but he was a good thinker, good philosopher. And he taught us that you can analyze any type of community by looking at 3 aspects of the community. Look at the actions that they engage in, look at the goods that they seek, and look at the commitments that they make to one another. Look at the norms that govern their lives. And so normally, since I'm at universities, I illustrate this with the academic community. So you can think about it this way. What makes a university an academic community rather than just a sports franchise and a business? You know, many universities now are just becoming football teams with annual giving campaigns. But why is that bad? That's what happens to your alma mater, right? What should university be? Well, we can engage in this analysis. One, they engage in academic actions. What are academic actions? The university professors, the scholars, they research and they write articles and books. Students then read those books. The university professors deliver lectures. Students attend those lectures and take notes. Professors write up exams. Students take the exams. Professors assign term papers. Students then write the term papers. Professors grade these things and then they discuss them over office hours. Those are the sort of actions, academic actions, that are the bread and butter of university life. Those are the sorts of things, not tailgating and annual giving campaigns. Those are nice kind of additions. But the really heart of the university are those sort of academic actions. What are those actions ordered towards? They're ordered towards pursuit of the truth. They're ordered towards the good of knowledge. All those hours that you spend in the library, that these academics spend writing books, that you spend reading books, they're all geared towards eliminating ignorance and error from our lives and coming to a better knowledge of the truth, a better understanding of reality. Or at least that's what universities should be about. They shouldn't be about indoctrination or about defending popular opinion. They should be about actually discovering the truth of reality, regardless of whether it's popular or unpopular, regardless of whether it's your preconceived opinion or not. Which then leads to the norms of a university, the commitments that university members make to each other. This is where things like the honor code come into play. This is where things like academic honesty, not plagiarizing your papers, citing all of your sources, not selectively quoting from texts, not selectively data mining, just cherry picking the data that supports your conclusion. Because the whole idea here is that you're not trying to engage in propaganda, you're trying to discover the truth and present the truth to someone else who could then check your work and say, wait, I think you made a mistake. I think you quoted this out of context. I think you didn't properly interpret the data. And if you're not just seeking to defend your preconceived opinion, but you're actually seeking to communally search the truth, you welcome other scholars who evaluate your papers and give you feedback. And you don't view it as an insult if someone says, I think you made a mistake here. You view it as a way of liberating you from a false belief. Right? If you write a book or a paper and you're making bad arguments, someone who criticizes you and helps you see better arguments has done you a favor. Or at least that's how we should view these things. I think too often the American Academy, if you see, just this past week what's taking place at Yale and at Missouri, too often it simply becomes about political correctness and about ideology and about kind of defending your opinion because it's your opinion, rather than, I want my opinion to be the truth. And so I'm going to get myself out of the way and open up to the truth. That's the aside about contemporary higher education. Let me apply this framework to the marital community. What we argued was that marriage is a comprehensive union, and what sets it apart from other relationships is its comprehensive nature. And marriage is comprehensive, so it's different in kind from other relationships in those three aspects. There's a comprehensive act that unites spouses. There are comprehensive goods that spouses are ordered towards. And there are comprehensive commitments that spouses make to one another. What I mean by this is that there's a comprehensive act that unites spouses at all levels of their humanity. So it's going to be a union of hearts, minds, and bodies. There's a comprehensive good that spouses are ordered towards. The good of their mutual love and assistance, but also the good of creating new life and then raising new life to maturity. And then there are comprehensive commitments that they make to each other, a comprehensive commitment throughout time, the pledge of permanence, and the comprehensive commitment at every moment in time, the exclusive, the pledge of exclusivity. Let me unpack this. Throughout all of today, the next 10 minutes will be the most dense, most difficult, most boring portion of anything I say. So if we have 4.5 hours together, once we get through the next 10 minutes, it'll all be smooth sailing. But this is what you actually need to do in our culture. It's something that each and every one of our grandparents took for granted. Of course, marriage is a permanent, exclusive union of husband and wife. We now need to defend. Something that was simply common sense and self-evident now needs an argument in its defense. So we have to do this, and at some point, I think it'll be easier to grasp. For the first time, it's going to sound somewhat foreign, but I think over time you'll see the logic of this, and you'll see how it's reflective of human nature. All right. So the first question is: there's a comprehensive act that unites spouses at all levels of their humanity. So the first thing is to ask about that is say, well, what are human beings? If we're going to unite comprehensively with another person, what does that require of us? Ordinary friendships are unions of hearts and minds. The marital relationship includes that bodily union because we're bodily beings. We're not just ghosts who inhabit bodies. We're not just brains that are in a vat of flesh. We're mind-body unity. You can either think of it as an ensouled body or as an enfleshed soul. But one way or the other, we're a psychosomatic unity. We're the unity of both mind and body, so that our bodies are personal. This is why the church has always taken our bodily nature seriously. It's always taken matter seriously. Because we're not just angels. We're not just ghosts. We're not just spirits. We're enfleshed beings, and the body matters because the body is personal. So to unite comprehensively with another person requires uniting at all levels of your personhood. And since our bodies are part of our beings, it's going to require a bodily union. But that then raises the question, well, how do you unite bodily with another person? The If I lick my finger and stick it in your ear, have we united bodily? Or have I given you a wet willy? No one's ever thought that wet willies consummate marriage. And there's a reason why. But to answer that question is to say, well, what is it that makes us one body? Because if we're trying to unite bodily with another person, we might first want to think, well, what is it that makes each and every one of us one body? There are some liberals who say an unborn child is just a clump of cells. Why are they wrong? The reason that they're wrong about the unborn child, the reason that they're wrong about us, is that the unborn child, just like us, has all of the various bodily subsystems integrated with each other for the common good of that child's life, just like we do. So our heart, our lungs, kidney, liver, muscle, bone, all of our various tissues, they're not just clumps of cells that happen to be hanging out near each other. They're all integrated with each other. They're all coordinated with each other for our common bodily physical existence. So take some of the subsystems of our body. Locomotion. We each walked in here this morning on our own, and when we're finished, we'll all walk out of here on our own. Digestion. If you ate breakfast this morning, you're currently digesting it as an individual completely on your own. Respiration. We're all inhaling oxygen. Circulation. Our heart is pumping oxygenated blood throughout our bodies. All of those various systems, the digestive system, the circulation system, circulatory system, the respiratory system, they're all unified, integrated, coordinating with each other for our sustained bodily existence. And we're complete as individuals with all those systems that I just mentioned. We're all radically incomplete with respect to one bodily system. Each and every one of us is half of a potential whole with respect to one bodily function. So that when a man and a woman unite in the marital act, they truly become one flesh. When the Hebrew scriptures talk about the two becoming one flesh, they're not speaking metaphorically or poetically, right? The emotional union is so intense, it's as if they became one flesh. That's not what the Bible's saying there. It's not saying that they're so much in love with each other, it's as if the two become one. No, Genesis is revealing something that's true about our nature, that at the physical and the metaphysical level, when a man and a woman unite in that conjugal act, they truly become one entity with respect to that single function of procreation. They become one entity to such a great extent that 9 months later it might require a name. And that begins to tell us something about the comprehensive act that unites a man and a woman as husband and wife also can make them mother and father. That the lovemaking act is also the life-giving act. And so just as academic actions are ordered towards the academic good of knowledge of the truth, so too the marital action is ordered towards the marital good of both the love between the spouses, but also the creation and then the raising of new human beings. A comprehensive good, unlike more or less anything else that you'll do in life. You think about it, what are the goods that the academic community is ordered towards? Maybe it's passing the next test, winning the next football game, getting a bonus if you're the annual giving director and you raise a lot of money. Those are all kind of concrete, tangible, limited goods. The marital good really sets you in a whole new trajectory in life. When a man and a woman become husband and wife, they actually change the course of their lives now together, and they set themselves up to then become mother and father. And when they create that new life, the obligations that they then take on to that child, fundamentally different than what you're doing when you sign up for your first job, when you sign up to be a student, when you sign up to be a CPA. There's really nothing else in life that's as comprehensive, short of kind of the kingdom of God, than what the marital relationship is ordered towards. Which then explains how this comprehensive act and this comprehensive good requires comprehensive commitments. So you don't ordinarily make a permanent commitment to your first boss out of college. You don't pledge till death do us part to your freshman year roommate. but you do to your spouse. Marriage is the only, outside of religious life, commitment that we make that's a till death do us part commitment. That's why it's interesting is that both religious life and marriage are kind of modeled on each other. You can think about, I'm Catholic, from a Catholic perspective, you can think like the vocation that priests and nuns might take is in lieu of a marital commitment, and it's to actually live out Christ's spousal union with the church. Right? So even that's already in spousal language and spousal imagery, and that explains partly the permanent nature of that commitment. But for spouses, a comprehensive commitment throughout time is going to require that till death do us part commitment to make to each other. A comprehensive commitment at every moment in time is going to require sexual fidelity, sexual exclusivity. The type of exclusivity that marriage calls for is sexual exclusivity because it's the sexual act that transforms an ordinary union of hearts and minds into the marital domain by unifying bodies as well. You don't ordinarily unite bodily with your friends or with your roommates or with your business partners. And so if you're here this morning attending this conference without your spouse, you're not cheating on your spouse. Marriage doesn't call for intellectual exclusivity. If you go to the gym with someone other than your spouse, you haven't cheated on your spouse. It doesn't call for athletic exclusivity. If you sleep with someone other than your spouse, you have cheated on your spouse because marriage calls for sexual exclusivity. And this understanding of what marriage is can explain why. It's not simply some hoop that we have to jump through, a hurdle that we have to clear. It's built into the very nature of the marital union and the marital commitment that these things hang together. Now, what I've just said, without all of the Aristotelian jargon and kind of the superstructure that we borrowed from Aristotle, this basic understanding of marriage is something that we see in the ancient Greek and Roman philosophers. We see it in the Jewish, the Christian, the Islamic traditions. We see it in Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke and Immanuel Kant. We see it in Eastern thinkers like Gandhi. What this suggests is that this understanding of marriage is based on human nature, and that different political, theological, and philosophical traditions have all been grasping onto various facts of human nature with greater or lesser success. Greater success at kind of the center, more fuzziness at the edges. They're trying to focus in on this picture of what marriage is. Based upon the realities of human nature, being male and female, the capacity of a male and a female to unite as one flesh, the ability of that one flesh union to create new life and then unite new life with a mother and a father. Various communities throughout human history, some of which had access to Christian revelation, many of which did not have access to Christian revelation, have been articulating something that looks like this. Because marriage isn't simply a supernatural institution, it's a natural institution. It's built into the very order of creation before it gets elevated to the order of grace. So for Christians, it's both, but that grace aspect simply perfects marriage. It doesn't destroy the natural aspect. And this is why non-Christians can and do and should get married. We've never viewed marriage as an institution only for Christians.